Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of Marvel Superheroes Commander deck techs. I'm releasing a new Marvel Commander deck every Thursday through mid-August when the Hobbit set drops, in addition to my usual Monday Commander deck tech videos. It's Marvel, so we're gonna have fun with it. As you see, today our commander is the mighty Thor, Jane Foster. Dr. Foster is a human physician who became embroiled in the life of Thor Odinson, and due to some characteristically questionable decisions on the part of Odin, the Allfather, the direction of her life was altered forever. She's been a mother and a widow, a goddess and a cancer patient, a martyr and a victor and an avenger, and a hero. And through it all, she's been worthy, and she's one of the few people in the Marvel Universe able to lift Mjolnir. In the current continuity, she wields Unterjarn, the All-Weapon, as Valkyrie. But for today, we're focusing on when she took on the mantle granted her by Mjolnir. I'm excited to show you what I put together for Thor, but before we get started, let's go over our deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a great card and why I thought it deserved a deck of its own. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward doing whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play commander. So let's talk about our commander. The mighty Thor, Jane Foster, is a 3/3 legendary human god hero for 1, a blue, and a white. She has flying. She has, whenever the mighty Thor attacks, exile up to 1 target non-token artifact or creature, then return that card to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control, and whenever an equipment you control enters, draw a card. I know what you're thinking. Another Voltron deck? It's true. I already built one for Monica Rambeau, and kind of another for Bruce Banner, both of which are linked in the video's description. But Bruce's deck is more about his search for a way to, evict his unwelcome roommate, while Photon's deck is about auras and going wide at the same time. Pretty pleased with that one. And as much as I'd like to say that this is more of a classic equipment-based commander damage deck, that's only half the story. Because Thor isn't just terrific at carrying a hammer, although she is that. She's a 3/3 flyer for 3 that essentially turns all our equipment into cantrips, a card advantage engine in the command zone. Eat your heart out, SRAM. But more than that, her attacks are so awe-inspiring that anyone who sees them can only blink in astonishment. For those who aren't familiar, Thor's second ability of exiling an artifact or creature and immediately returning it to the battlefield is generally referred to as flickering or blinking. It gives us the benefit of getting any enters triggers from that permanent a second time, since it did leave and re-enter the battlefield. And while Thor does have those permanents re-enter tapped, that's a small price to pay for a second bite at the apple, especially if we're blinking an equipment and triggering her card draw ability too. Better still, her attack trigger isn't limited to blinking our artifacts and creatures. We have the option of blinking our opponent's stuff, meaning creatures we hit will come back tapped and unable to block, and mana rocks and utility cards will enter a sort of use it or lose it mode as their controller responds to our trigger. Such a strong, flexible design almost feels like it'd be at home in a higher powered set. Oh, well, there you go. Our commander gives us a lot to work with, so who are we to argue? Our deck is split between artifacts to equip to Thor and sources of value we can double dip into with her attack trigger, assuming we aren't using it against an opponent. We have a solid contingent of creatures to back her up, as well as ways to use our artifacts beyond the intended. Add to that a collection of strong synergy pieces, and we are ready to bring the thunder. In researching Dr. Foster, I found a bunch of great quotes from her, but one of my favorites comes from Thor Volume 4. She's fighting the Destroyer armor, and it's revealed to be controlled by Kull Borson, Odin's villainous older brother. He boasts disdainfully, "Just so you know, girl, my name is Kull Borson, the Serpent, the god of fear, and I have quite a bit of experience when it comes to killing Thors." In reply, she smiles and says, "Mayhap, but you have never met a Thor like me." Another great quote from this issue comes when Odin himself says, "Today, death comes for the one who would be Thor." And Jane answers, "Today my hammer comes for your face!" You'll enjoy this deck if you share that sentiment. So, as usual, this Moxfield list we're going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will see a considering section filled with cards that I considered putting into this deck, but ultimately which didn't make the cut for me. However, if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you like what I've done here and you want to go more heavily into it, or if you're interested in using this as a jumping off point and then taking it in a different direction, that considering section is a great place to begin when you build your own The Mighty Thor Jane Foster deck. So let's begin with the section that I know you're most excited about. These are our equipment. We've got 25 different cards that give us equipment we can probably, most likely, put on the Mighty Thor, but if we don't, we have plenty of other creatures to put them on. Generally though, they're going on Thor. We've got a classic to start us off, it's Bloodforged Battle Axe. This is a single generic mana for an equipment that equips for 2 and gives the equipped creature +2/+0, and when that equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, we make a token that's a copy of this equipment. So pretty sweet for us, a way to continually put more equipment in play, but not just that. When we have the Bloodforged Battle Axe's trigger resolve, we're going to get a new equipment entering the battlefield, which is going to trigger our commander and draw us a card. So not only is Bloodforged Battle Axe a way for us to get more and more equipment and therefore more and more power for our commander, with our commander out, it also becomes a card draw effect. So it's sort of like it says, when this deals combat damage to a player, make a token copy of this and draw a card. Pretty great. Next is Dragonfire Blade, one of the coolest cards from Tarkir Dragonstorm, in my opinion. I just think it's really neat. This is a single generic mana for an equipment that equips for 4, but the equip cost costs 1 less to activate for each color of the creature it targets. So, because it costs 4, but our commander is white and blue, it actually costs 2. So, for 1 mana, we get a equipment that equips for essentially 2 to our commander and gives them +2/+2 and hexproof from monocolored. So that's not as good as hexproof, obviously, because she can still be targeted by things like Mortify or, I don't know, Airtie Resurrected. Anything that's not monocolored. Of course, she could be targeted by something like a Meteor Golem. It doesn't have any colors. But as long as the spell has only one color, like Lightning Bolt or Path to Exile, she can't be targeted by it. That's pretty good. At least by our opponents. Next is Lava Spur Boots, a single generic mana for an equipment that equips for only 1 and gives the equipped creature +1/+0, haste, and ward 1. A tiny little bit of protection, a little bit of haste, which is pretty good since our commander has an attack trigger, and a little bit of power boost, all for just 1 and 1. That seems pretty neat. Next is the Adaptive Omni Tool. This is a card from the Aetherdrift Commander set that I think is going to need to be reprinted because it's so useful in these kinds of decks. This is 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 3 and gives the equipped creature +1/+1 for each artifact you control. That counts itself, but it also counts any token artifacts you might have, like clues or treasures. It counts any copies you have, like from the Bloodforged Battle Axe, any of your mana rocks, all artifacts. Even if you're running artifact lands, it'll count those. We are not in this deck, but you could if you wanted to. Point is, this gives you a nice big power boost for just a total of 2 and equipped for 3. And it has a whole nother ability for card advantage. When the equipped creature attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library, you may reveal an artifact card from among them, put it in your hand, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So in a deck that is running 40 total artifacts, Adaptive Omni Tool looking 6 deep essentially says, get +1/+1 for each artifact you control and draw an artifact when you attack. Pretty great. Now, I should mention here, just as an example, I don't think this is a good use of this, but you could, if you were to want to, attack with Thor while equipped with the Omni Tool. You get 2 attack triggers, and one of them is on the Omni Tool and one of them is from Thor. We could, if we wanted to, flicker the Omni Tool with Thor's ability. It will fall off, obviously, and it'll come back in tapped, but it will still count toward this total number of artifacts we have, since it will have re-entered before this ability resolves, if we resolve the second, of course. And since it entered, we do draw a card off of our commander. So not the best option for us to do that with. Usually we're not flickering the artifacts that we have, the equipment that we have attached to our commander, but it is an option for us if we just are desperate to dig for a card. However, you're going to see we have plenty of card advantage in this deck, especially ways to simulate it, like Adaptive Omni Tool is actual card advantage. Bloodforged Battle Axe simulates it because of our commander, so yeah. Usually we're not having to flicker that, but just in case we just need to draw a card, we sure could. Next up is Black Blade Reforged, a classic originally in Dominaria 2018. This is 2 generic mana for a legendary equipment that equips for 7, but equips a legendary creature for 3. So, similar to the Omni Tool, except the Omni Tool costs 2 and equips for 3. Blackblade Reforged also costs 2, and for our commander, equips for 3. So pretty good. And gives +1/+1 to the equipped creature for each land we control. So this scales, much like the Omni Tool does, as we play the game more. Pretty good. Really big. Next up is Conqueror's Flail, and we're using the Final Fantasy art here just because it's least expensive, but there are plenty of other printings of Conqueror's Flail. This is 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 2 and gives the equipped creature +1/+1 for each color among permanents we control. So generally, this is only giving +2/+2, but on the other hand, it's usually giving +2/+2. It's pretty infrequent that we have this out without our commander or equipped to something when we don't have both of our colors represented. Maybe after a board wipe that would be the case. Yeah. Also, even if we're not getting any benefit from this, because maybe we only have one creature out and it's colorless, as long as this equipment is attached to a creature, our opponents can't cast spells during our turn. So that's a pretty nice effect that we're seeing a lot in cards recently, like Voice of Victory. Voice of Victory is more than a year old now, but still, it's still a powerful effect, especially in Commander, and especially if we're expecting to be able to attack with a Voltron commander, swing in, and not have to worry about spells being cast during combat. That would be a surprise for us. Conqueror's Flail helps us with that. Next up is Gold Pan. This is a kind of a fun one from Thunder Junction. 2 generic for an equipment that equips for 1 and just gives +1/+1, but when it enters, we make a treasure. So this is pretty neat. Like, we pay 2 and we immediately get refunded for 1 when it comes in because it makes us a treasure. If our commander is in play, it's also going to draw us a card off of her trigger. And then we just spend 1 mana, which could be from that treasure, to equip it and make her a little bit bigger. However, we don't have to. We can equip this to her if we want to for that little power and toughness boost, but we usually have a lot of other cards in hand in this deck that we might want to equip instead. So at the very least, Gold Pan exists for us to flicker it. We aren't doing anything else with it anyway if we're not attaching it to ourselves, and if we flicker it, it doesn't matter if it was attached because it isn't anymore. But when we flicker it, we get another treasure token. So every time we attack, we use our Gold Pan to turn our commander's attack trigger into a little bit of acceleration, but just making more treasures for us. Neat. Next up is Ilvoy Lightjammer from Edge of Eternities. This is 1 and a blue for an equipment that equips for 3, but it has flash, and when it enters, we attach it to a creature we control, and that creature gains hexproof until end of turn. So really, also it gives that creature +1/+2, not to be forgotten about. But because it has flash, auto equips, or what's called snaps on, it snaps onto a creature and gives hexproof. The way you want to think of this is a 2 mana protection spell that also pumps up whatever you're protecting. And if we lose that creature, we don't lose the jammer, we just equip it again later. What's nice about this is there are several different equipment across Magic and also in this deck that have this ability. When it enters, attach it to something. I have not called those a blinkable thing because usually if it's already attached to our commander, if we attack with our commander, we don't get a lot of benefit out of blinking it and having it re-enter and auto-attach, unless it does something else as well. And in this case, it does. So being able to give Thor hexproof a second time, or give hexproof to something else, because we might flicker this, even if it falls off Thor, it can be attached to a different creature we control and give that thing hexproof just for protection. Usually, it's not that big of a deal for us because, it's not giving hexproof with this kind of trigger is something that happens not in response to an opponent, since that would be us flashing this in, but rather if we're flickering this, they're going to be able to respond to us before it actually attaches and gives hexproof, and that's a shame. However, it is possible that maybe this falls off of a creature, or maybe it was on a creature that's not our commander, we want to move it to our commander. We can flicker it with our commander's attack ability, or attack trigger, and then move it to our commander, or move it to a different creature, and that hexproof is pretty nice to have, but maybe we just want it for the pump. Good. Next up, we have an interesting one. This is sort of the Animist, but I've chosen the Marvel Superheroes Commander printing simply because it's cheapest and also it's thematic. It's a Marvel card. Sounds good. This is 2 generic mana for a legendary equipment that equips for 2 and gives +1/+1, and an attack trigger. When the creature attacks, we get to Rampant Growth. Search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So this is a nice way for us to repeatedly ramp ourselves, as well as giving a little bit of a power and toughness bonus for just 2 and 2. Pretty good. We also got the Swifties. Swiftfoot Boots are 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives hexproof and haste to the equipped creature. Haste can be relevant in this deck. It's possible that on turn 2 we get out it's possible that we get out our commander with the Swiftfoot Boots already in play, and if we have 1 extra mana to play around with, which we might, thanks to Soul Ring or something like that, then we can equip it to our commander immediately, and then swing in and get the attack trigger. Or it might be that we want to be able to cast the Swiftfoot Boots, trigger our commander, and draw a card. Then if we've got 1 extra mana, we just put them on our commander and we get that attack trigger as well. Pretty sweet. Even if all we wanted to do with that was say, I want to have Swiftfoot Boots in play and draw 2 cards. Drawing 2 cards is divination, so 2 + 1 is 3, which is the cost of divination. So we get our commander in play, we cast the boots for 2, we draw a card. We equip them and attack, we flicker them with our commander. They re-enter, obviously falling off of our commander, but our commander's already attacking with haste maybe. So it doesn't matter that they may no longer have haste if they're already declared as an attacker. And then, thanks to the flicker, the boots come back, we draw another card. If we really want to protect her, we can just re-equip them post-combat. This is not the absolute most efficient way of drawing 2 cards, but it's a nice possibility for us for something that's an inexpensive artifact. Next up, we have Thrawn Power Suit. This is from the Brothers War. For 2 generic, we get an equipment that equips for 2 and gives the equipped creature +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to it, as well as Ward 2. So a little bit more protection, and similar effect to what we were getting from the Omni tool we saw earlier. Now, it doesn't count equipment that we do not have attached to that creature, but if it's equipped, then it's at least counting itself, so it's at least +1/+1. That's all right. Next is Assassin Gauntlet, which is so cool in this deck. We've got a cool combo that I'll talk about in a few cards. 2 and a blue for an equipment that says when it enters, attach it to 1 target creature you control, and then tap all creatures target opponent controls. So Assassin Gauntlet comes in and says, this creature is not going to get blocked unless your opponent has a flash creature in hand, or a way to flicker their own creature or untap it otherwise. So there are ways around this, but generally what this looks like is tap all of an opponent's creatures. They're not going to untap until their next untap step, which could be, if we're attacking the opponent to our left, the next turn. But if we're attacking the opponent to our right, then we're going to get to attack them with nothing able to block, assuming no little tricks like flash or flickering or whatever. And so is everyone else, because their shields are going to be completely down. It's also possible that because our commander flies, we could attack opponent A and have Assassin Gauntlet come in and tap down all the creatures on opponent B's playmat or opponent C's playmat. That way, we don't, because it does not say tap down all creatures that defending player controls. That seems pretty cool. So we've got good things we can do with Assassin Gauntlet, and that's not the only thing it does. It also gives +1/+1, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card and discard a card. So this is not card advantage because it is looting. We end up with the same number of cards that we had. However, it does give us a way to put something into the graveyard, which maybe we care about for a recursion effect, and it gives us a little card selection. So if it's a situation where we've drawn a lot of cards, because we definitely just did when this entered, thanks to our commander's trigger, maybe we've got a bunch of lands in hand and we'd rather throw it away and hope for something better. This is a good way to do that. Notably though, Assassin Gauntlet's trigger is an on-combat damage trigger, as opposed to our commander's trigger, which is an attack trigger. Just remember the distinction. Next we have Bespoke Bow from the Ninja Turtles set. 2 and a blue for an equipment that equips for 3 and gives +2/+1 and vigilance, making our commander into a 5/4 vigilant flyer, which is close enough to a Sarah Angel for me. And it says, when it enters, return up to 1 other target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So this doesn't have flash, so I don't consider a bounce effect that can hit our own stuff a way to protect our things. But we can hit our own stuff with this if we want to. Maybe we have a creature or another equipment that we want to bounce to our hand so that we can then recast it and rebuy its enters trigger. You know, we've got plenty of good stuff that you'll see in the Blinkables section that we care about having it re-enter, so bouncing it and recasting it is another way for us to have that re-entry happen, and we get to rebuy our trigger. But typically, this effect is so that we can remove someone else's thing. Maybe we see someone spend 8 mana on some kind of really big, scary thing. We spend our 3 mana, bounce it back to their hand. They're going to be able to recast it, but they've got to spend the 8 mana again. Especially nice is the fact that this happens when it enters, so that we can equip this to our commander, attack, and our commander is a 5/4 vigilance attacker. We get her her attack trigger rather, and we flicker the bow. The bow will fall off. Now she's not a 5/4 anymore, she's just a 3/3, but she's still attacking without being tapped because she's already been declared as an attacker when she had vigilance. So it's like she still has vigilance. And the bow will re-enter thanks to her flicker, and it will bounce something that we get to that we want to bounce, whether it's ours or an opponent's. This could be us bouncing a blocker, like a flying blocker that we want to get past. It could be bouncing that big 8 mana thing for the second time in that same turn, possibly. Yeah, pretty sweet. Also, I guess I should mention, if it's not clear, we'll use the bow as an example for this. Equipment, it doesn't matter if they're tapped or not. They still, if we have the bow equipped to our commander, for example, and the bow itself is tapped somehow, then that's not a big deal. It still does everything that it does. This is not, the 90s anymore where certain artifacts stop functioning if they're tapped. Just worth mentioning for some things that will come up in a little bit. Next up, we have Celestial Armor. This is from Foundations. It's really cool. It's 2 and a white for an equipment that equips for 3 and a white, but it has flash, and when it enters, we attach it to target creature we control, and that creature gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So pretty great on its own. Protects our creature from most everything that isn't like an exile-based board wipe or a big bounce-based board wipe, that kind of thing, Flood of Tears sort of spells. Being able to flash this in and have it snap on to our commander is very powerful, especially giving our commander hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, but it also gives the equipped creature +2/+0 and flying. Now, our commander's already got flying, but we could put this on something else if we wanted to. Or, if we've got it on something else, we could flicker it with our commander. We might say, we're going to attack with our commander, who's wearing the armor, and some other creature. Our commander gets an attack trigger. We use it to flicker the armor, which means it falls off our commander, leaves the battlefield, and comes back in. It re-enters and attaches to that other creature we're attacking with. That creature gains hexproof and indestructible, but also +2/+0 and flying. So now, even though we attacked with a non-flying creature, it has flying before the declare blocker step, so it's as though we attacked with it while it was flying, in the sense that it's not blockable by anything but creatures with flying and reach. Pretty good. Also, we could move it back to our commander. We can give something hexproof and indestructible. Being able to give indestructible is really cool, especially if our commander somehow has trample and there's some flying blockers. And we're like, well, we want to just do some damage, so we can swing in with the Celestial Armor, have it re-equipped to our commander because we flicker it with her, and now she's got indestructible plus a little bit of a power boost, and we're able to do a little damage through whatever they block with, if they even still want to block. Pretty good. Next up, we have Champion's Helm. This is 3 generic for an equipment that only equips for 1 and gives +2/+2, and as long as the equipped creature is legendary, it has hexproof. So this is sort of the Big Daddy version of the Swiftfoot Boots. It doesn't give haste, and it costs 1 more to cast, but it does give +2/+2, and that's pretty good. Next, we have the Cryptic Coat. Really cool card in this deck. 2 and a blue for an equipment that we cannot equip to our commander, because when it enters, we cloak the top card of our library and then attach the Cryptic Coat to it. To cloak a card means we take that card off the top of our library and we can look at it, but we put it face down onto the battlefield, and it's a 2/2 creature with Ward 2, and if it is a creature card, we can, at any time when we have priority, spend its mana cost to flip it. turn it face up. So really, really cool being able to take the top card of our library and turn it into a 2/2 with Ward 2 with the Cryptic Coat attached to it, and the coat gives +1/+0 and can't be blocked. The cryptic creature can't be blocked, which means what we're getting is we're paying 2 and a blue to turn the top card of our library into a 3/2 unblockable creature with Ward 2, which is pretty good on its own. But we have fun things we can do with this that are sneaky tricks, beyond just uncloaking it by paying its mana cost, if of course that card is a creature card. If it's not a creature card, we can't uncloak it. But here's what we can do with it. We can use our commander to flicker the Cryptic Coat, which means the coat will leave the battlefield, it will re-enter. When it enters, we'll cloak the top card of our library and attach this to it. The previous card that it was attached to just stays in play. It just remains a 2/2 creature with Ward 2 unless we've flipped it up or something. So we can use our commander's ability to continually make bears with Ward. We each turn the top card of our library into a 2/2 with Ward 2 by flickering the Cryptic Coat. And the last one we've done that to is actually a 3/2 with Unblockable and Ward 2. So that's pretty powerful. Even more powerful, though, is that those cards on top of our library are face down and they are creatures. So even if, let's say that is a basic Plains card on the top of our library, right now it's a face down card, so it's a 2/2 with Ward 2 because it's cloaked. What we do is we take our commander and we flicker that creature, that 2/2, it will leave the battlefield and it will re-enter as a land. It's no longer what it was because it's a new game object, it is just what it's printed to be. And because it re-enters face up, because everything enters face up unless it says otherwise, or an effect puts it into play face down, like Cryptic Coat does, then what we've done is we've just turned our 3-mana equipment that made us a creature, we've turned that creature into a land, which we can tap for mana right away if we want. If it was a creature, we can just turn it face up at any time for its mana cost, or we can simply flicker it with our commander and it will re-enter just as a creature. Maybe we've got like a 5 or a 7 mana creature that is face down as a 2/2 with Ward 2. We flicker it, it comes in as itself. The only cards that we would not want to do this with are non-permanent cards, which is to say instants or sorceries, because an instant and a sorcery, neither of those card types can enter the battlefield. They are never on the battlefield. They're in our hand, they're on the stack, they're in the graveyard, they can go to exile, basically anywhere other than the battlefield. Which means if we have a face down, path to exile, and we flicker it, it will go to exile and it will not come back in because it can't enter the battlefield. The rules of the game prevent it. So the idea behind this is, if we want to make a 2/2, we cast Cryptic Coat. If we want to make another 2/2, we flicker Cryptic Coat, and we just keep doing that as we print more 2/2s. And then whenever we're ready to, we can use our commander's attack ability to flicker the 2/2s, any of these face down 2/2s that we want, and it will come back as whatever it is. Assuming it's not an instant or sorcery, we're going to get it to come in. Maybe it's a big mana rock, maybe it's a land, maybe it's a different creature, maybe it's another equipment. And if it's an equipment, it will enter, and we'll get a trigger off our commander for that and draw a card. So Cryptic Coat does a lot of things for us with us flickering it and flickering the things that it makes, the creatures it makes. And if we need to, we can pay 1 and a blue and return it to our hand, which is great because that gives us the ability to recast it and do this all over again. So usually we're not doing this, but you never know. Sometimes it is better for us to use our commander's attack ability to flicker other things, and we just want to spend the mana on Cryptic Coat, bringing it back to our hand and then recasting it the next turn maybe. So yeah, great card for our deck. Lets us cheat things in. Love that. Next up, we have Nettle Cyst. From Modern Horizons 2, this is a card that I really think is so cool. It's 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 2 and gives the equipped creature +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment that we control. Now, we only have 1 enchantment in the deck, which is okay. But generally, this is sort of like our Adaptive Omni tool, in that for 3 mana +2, we get a way to give our commander +1/+1 for every artifact we have in play. And if we happen to have that enchantment, we get 1 more even beyond that. However, Nettle Cyst also has Living Weapon, which means when we have this enter, we make a 0/0 black Phyrexian Germ creature token and attach Nettle Cyst to it. So the idea is, Nettlecyst is going to come in and essentially be a 1/1 creature for us because it comes with its own token, and that token has no power and toughness beyond 0, but it doesn't die immediately because it's wearing the Nettlecyst, and Nettlecyst is giving at least +1/+1 because it itself is an artifact. So the idea here is we flicker the Nettlecyst and we get another germ. We don't really care to do that a lot of times because if we flicker the Nettlecyst, it will leave, re-enter, and we'll get to have another germ, but the original germ will die unless we, I guess, put another equipment on that germ. So normally what we're looking at this as is this is an equipment that makes its own creature to hold it until we want to equip it to our commander. So maybe we've got 10 artifacts in play. We cast the Nettlecyst. It's an 11/11 creature for now. We can use that, or we can flicker it and have it come back in, draw us another card from our commander since it's an equipment entering. Or we can just not flicker it and just equip it at sorcery speed. We will lose that germ, but whatever. Now our commander's huge. And if we need to get a new germ, we can always re-flicker the Nettlecyst and turn it back into a creature essentially, since it will re-enter and Living Weapon will trigger again. Great modality for it. In this deck, it's not quite a reconfigure creature, but it almost is. Next up is Bioorganic Carapace from the Spider-Man set. 2, a white and a blue for an equipment that equips for 2, and when it enters, it attaches to a target creature we control. So this doesn't do anything when it enters and attaches to a creature we control, it just attaches itself, just snaps on, and that's fine. Because what it does beyond that is it gives the equipped creature +2/+2, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card for each modified creature we control. A creature is modified if it is equipped with an equipment, if it is enchanted by an aura we control, or if it has any kind of counter on it. So, at the very least, if we do damage with our commander while she's wearing the Bioorganic Carapace, she's going to draw us a card because she is a modified creature. But if we've spread out our equipment, then we might be able to draw even more cards. Or if we have something like our Nettlecyst, that's a creature token wearing its own equipment, so that's a modified creature. So Bioorganic Carapace will draw us a card for that too. Nice. Next, from Streets of New Capenna, is a card that I'm always excited to be able to put into a deck. Expensive on the front end, but afterwards pretty cheap. 4 generic mana gives us Brass Knuckles, an equipment that equips for only 1, and says when you cast the spell, copy it. So we cast Brass Knuckles, and we get a token copy of Brass Knuckles in play, and then the original resolves, and we get that too. So we get 2 Brass Knuckles, 2 different equipment when we just spend 4 mana, and both of those equipment only equip for 1. But what they do is they give the equipped creature double strike as long as that creature has 2 or more equipment attached to it. So just by themselves, they don't do anything. But if they are equipped to a creature who has any other equipment equipped to them, then that creature suddenly has double strike. So Brass Knuckles is great for us to be able to say, why don't we cast this and equip the original or the token, whichever we want, to our commander, then equip the other one, the other Brass Knuckles, to a different creature, and as long as we put another equipment on that different creature as well, now both our commander and that different creature have the knuckles, or have double strike. It also means that since our commander triggers and draws us a card whenever an equipment we control enters, Brass Knuckles is going to draw us 2 cards, because the copy will resolve and enter as a token, and then the original will resolve and enter as itself, and we'll get a card draw trigger from our commander from both of those. So 4 mana, we get 2 equipment that are cheap to equip, plus 2 cards. Great. Next up is Dancer's Chakrams. This is a really cool card from the Final Fantasy Commander product. 3 and a white for an equipment that equips for 3, Krishna for some reason, and has Job Select. Job Select is sort of like Living Weapon. It comes in, but instead of making a 0/0 black Phyrexian green, Phyrexian germ creature token, it makes a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, and then attaches itself to it. So Dancer's Chakrams is 4 mana, and we get a 1/1 token that's equipped with it when it first comes in. It gives that equipped creature +2/+2, lifelink, and an ability that says other commanders you control get +2/+2 and have lifelink. And it also makes that creature it's attached to a performer in addition to its other types. So this is, for 3 mana, we get a 3/3 lifelinker that also gives our commander +2/+2 and lifelink, and we don't even have to attach the chakrams to our commander to get that benefit. So why would we? I suppose it's possible. There are some cards that would care about that. For example, we've got our Thran Power Suit. It gives +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to that creature. So it benefits us to attach the Denture Chakram to it. But unless we have something that gives us that kind of synergy, we really just want to let ourselves have a 3/3 for 4, a 3/3 lifelink for 4, that's also giving our commander +2/+2 and lifelink. And if we move the chakrams to any other creature, it's still giving us that benefit, as long as, of course, that creature we move it to is not our commander, because it doesn't give it twice. Next, we have Leyline Axe, a card that did very well for me in the Foundation's pre-release, and a really cool card. It's 4 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 3 and gives the equipped creature +1/+1, double strike, and trample. That's a lot of value, even though it costs 4 and equips for 3. A lot of mana, but a lot of value, especially on our commander. And it's a Leyline Axe, so it's got the Leyline text. If it's in our opening hand, we can begin the game with it on the battlefield. This happens before turn 1. Just if we have this in our opener, we start with this in play, so it doesn't matter that it costs 4 mana. It only equips for 3 and it's already in play. Great. Next, we have Mjolnir Stormhammer, which is not the Mjolnir from the Marvel set. This is from the Assassin's Creed set, because the one from the Marvel set is red, so we couldn't put it in this deck. But I felt like Mjolnir needed to be in this deck, so here it is. It's something. It's a hammer. This is 4 generic mana for a legendary equipment that equips for 4, but it does snap on to a legendary creature we control when it enters. And it says, whenever equipped creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls and put a stun counter on that creature. Then Mjolnir deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of tapped creatures that opponent controls. That opponent, in this case, being the one who controls the creature we tap down, which is to say defending player. So this means we get to create a little bit of a slow, or like a small removal effect. You know, tapping a creature down and stunning it is sort of like lengthy evasion in a way, because it can't block. And at least it turns off any sort of tap abilities that creature might have. And the stun counter makes it stay on there for a little bit longer, and that's fine. But it also means that if we attack the same opponent 2 turns in a row, that creature that we tapped down the first time with this Mjolnir trigger is still tapped when we do another creature. So we're going to be able to increase the amount of damage that Mjolnir is doing to each opponent turn by turn. It is also an encouragement for us to attack someone who's already tapped down in a bunch of ways, which doesn't seem all that honorable to me, but I don't know the Assassin's Creed lore around Mjolnir Stormhammer. However, there is a cool combo that I mentioned earlier that Mjolnir works with. If you look back at Assassin Gauntlet enters, we put it on a creature, and we tap all creatures target opponent controls. Then, let's say we've already got Mjolnir in play, or we cast it then, because it will auto-equip. We attack with our commander, or whatever we've got attacking, and we get to tap down a creature the defending player controls. But if our Assassin Gauntlet has already tapped all of those creatures that player controls, then all we're doing is just putting a stun counter on one of them with Mjolnir. And all of those creatures are tapped, so Mjolnir will deal damage equal to the number of creatures that opponent controls to each player, to each opponent, including that one. So the cool combo here with Mjolnir and Assassin's Gauntlet in the Assassin's Creed cards, that seems neat, you know, just something fun for us to be able to do, especially if we were to want to build more into this. I mean, the white-blue 2-color combination is the one that in Wilds of Eldraine cared about tapping our opponent's creatures down. It's a theme that you could delve into if you wanted to go a little harder into it. I didn't do that much for this deck, I just wanted to have a Mjolnir in here. But yeah, I think this is a cool combination. Next up, we have Vibranium Strike Gauntlets. 4 generic mana for an equipment that has flash and equips for 3, and it says when it enters, attach it to target creature you control. That's great. It's a 4 mana snap-on equipment with flash that gives the equipped creature +3/+0, trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. So a really cool ability for us to give a nice little bit of pump, a little bit of evasion, trampling over whatever reach or flying blockers our opponents may have, and to draw us even more cards. Cool. Plus, we can flash it in, so at the very least, we might flash this in on an opponent's turn. Put it on our commander, draw a card. They don't expect our commander to have all that much power, and now they do. Cool. Next, we have Machinist's Arsenal. This is another Final Fantasy card with job select. 4 and a white for an equipment that Machina somehow equips for 4, but it has job select. So it enters, it makes a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, and attaches itself to that token. And it gives the equipped creature +2/+2 for each artifact we control, and makes that creature into an artificer. So this is just an expensive to cast and expensive to equip way to absolutely pump our commander up beyond all reasonable area, because just it doesn't even say for each equipment equipped to that creature or attached to that creature. So yeah, Machinist's Arsenal is a big way for us to have a nice huge boost to our commander, or it's a 5-mana huge creature, because it'll come in and at the very least be a 5-mana 2 or 5-mana 3/3, since it's a 1/1 getting +2/+2 for itself. And then every additional artifact we have in play adds an additional +2/+2 to it, so it's very likely this is going to be like a 5-mana 7/7 or bigger. Pretty good. Finally, in this section, we have an Avatar: The Last Airbender card. It's Meteor Sword. This is Meteor Golem as an equipment. It's a 7 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 3, and when it enters, we destroy target permanent, and it gives the equipped creature +3/+3. So this is a great card to just treat as a blinkable, or to treat as an equipment, or both. We equip this to our commander. That's a total of 10 mana that we've spent to do so, 7 to cast, 3 to equip. But our commander's getting +3/+3, and when we attack with her, if we don't care about that +3/+3, we just flicker the Meteor Sword and blow up any permanent. Now obviously, the kind of decks I build are not really intended for land destruction, but we can hit anything we need to with this, and that's an option for us if we're in that situation. Maybe someone's running like a Gaia's Cradle. But generally, up against this kind of deck, you're going to be saying, what is the best blocker that I can remove? What is the best threat that I don't want to have to worry about since I'm attacking with my commander? I can get rid of it with the Meteor Sword. And we can flicker this every turn that Thor attacks so that we're able to blow something up every turn if we need to. Great. And that covers our equipment section. We're going to go now to a little side note, because this is our Voltron section. These are all cards that we use to do the thing we're doing in this deck, which is Voltroning up our commander, that aren't themselves equipment. So these are cards that help us with all that. For example, Pure Steel Paladin, a classic. Double white for a 2/2 human knight that when an equipment we control enters, lets us draw a card if we wish to. So it lets us have the same trigger that Thor gives us. So every equipment comes with 2 cards maybe, if we want to. We don't have to, this is a may. So we're able to keep our hand within a reasonable limit if we wish to. As opposed to the Mighty Thor, which just says draw a card, it doesn't say you may. So Pure Steel Paladin can draw us quite a few cards in this deck. But even more important is its Metalcraft ability. Equipment we control have equipped for 0 as long as we control 3 or more artifacts. That is not even equipped legendary creature for 0. Any creature we want of our own, we can equip. It's still a sorcery speed effect, because that's how equipping works. But as long as we have at least 3 artifacts in play, Pure Steel Paladin lets us equip for free and move our equipment around however we want, just at the regular timing rules. So really helpful for our ability to put expensive things on our commander. Next we have Forensic Gadgeteer. I really like this card. 2 and a blue for a 2/3 Vidalcan Artificer Detective that says whenever you cast an artifact spell, investigate. Investigate means to create a clue token, which is an artifact token that says pay 2 and sack it to draw a card. So even more card draw if we need it, even more artifacts in play, and this is a cast trigger, not just an enters trigger, the way that our commander and Pure Steel Paladin have a trigger for us to draw a card. It also gives us a way to, if we need to rebuild, if we need to fill out our hand a little bit later, if we've just got a bunch of mana lying around, we don't normally do that in this deck because we have so much repeatable draw. But if we do have a bunch of extra mana, we can pump it into our clues and turn it into card draw. Or we can have these clues sitting around, adding to our artifact count for things like our Adaptive Omni tool, just giving us even bigger creatures that are equipped to it. But the reason the Gadgeteer is in this section is because it says activated abilities of artifacts you control cost 1 generic less to activate, but this effect can't reduce the mana in that cost to less than 1 mana. So notably, this effect is really intended for these clues. It makes it so we can pay 1 and sack a clue to draw a card, because it makes it cost 1 less. But equipping is an activated ability. So if we have Pure Steel Paladin in play, this is not doing much for us when it comes to our equip abilities, because we can equip for 0. However, if Pure Steel Paladin's not in play, we're able to pay 1 less for each equip every time we need to. And that's great, even if we're having to do that minimum amount. If we have like a Swiftfoot Boots, it only equips for 1 anyway, so we're not getting a lot of benefit there. But if we have our Meteor Sword, it's equipping for a lot less, well, I mean, for 2 rather than 3, and that's a big difference. That could be the difference between us equipping 2 things during that turn or 1. Gadgeteer helps us both ways. Finally, in this section is Forge Anew from the Lord of the Rings set. This is 2 and a white for an enchantment that says when it enters, we return target equipment card from our graveyard to the battlefield. One of our few ways of recurring equipment, and that can be really great. If someone disenchants one of our great equipment, Forge Anew lets us get it back. It also lets us, during our turn, activate equip abilities anytime we can cast an instant. So we can equip things mid-combat. We can attack with our commander, have our opponent choose to block because they think they can kill her, and we suddenly equip every other equipment we didn't have equipped to her, even if they were already equipped to other creatures, and make her huge and kill whatever they blocked with. Or if they didn't block, do a bunch more damage to the defending player. In addition, if that weren't enough, we may pay 0 rather than pay the equip cost of the first equip ability we activate during each of our turns. So this is not quite as good as what Pure Steel Paladin gives us, but it doesn't require us to have Metalcraft, and we can use it at instant speed if we need to. So for free, as long as it's the first time we've equipped something that turn, we can equip something at instant speed to one of our creatures. Pretty great. That covers our Voltron section and sort of all the things we're doing with equipment, at least directly. The other part of our game plan is our Blinkables. These are all cards that give us value when they enter, or sometimes a little bit more than that. And so they're good targets for us to use our commander's attack trigger on and exile them and return them tapped. So first we have Cryogen Relic. This is 1 and a blue for an artifact that says when it enters or leaves the battlefield, draw a card. So we cast this for 2, we get to replace it in our hand. We attack with our commander and flicker this, it will enter and it will leave, so we will draw 2 cards off of that. It's not an equipment, so it's not drawing us a card from entering thanks to our commander, but it's drawing us a card from entering and leaving on its own, so this is a great thing for us to just repeatedly flicker if we have nothing better to do to get even more cards than we had. We can also pay 1 and a blue and sacrifice it to put a stun counter on up to 1 target tapped creature. We get a creature tapped, or we wait for it to get tapped, and we are able to stun that, so we don't have to worry about it for that much longer, one of our opponent's creatures. And since we've sacrificed it, it's leaving the battlefield, so it'll also draw a card for us again. Very cool. Next we have Gold Pan. We've already seen it. We blink it, we get more treasure. Seems good. Ilvoy Lightjammer is one of our equipment that if we blink it, it doesn't just snap on, it also gives it effect, like in this case, Hexproof. Aang Swift Savior is next. Now, this is a really cool card. If you're interested in Aang, I built 2 decks for Aang when the Avatar set was the most recent one in Standard. It is Aang Swift Savior for people who are brand new to Magic and no Avatar and want like a flavorful deck. I think last I saw it's very inexpensive based on the cards that are in it. And then in that same video, of course this video is linked in this video's description, there's an upgraded deck that is more of a competitive, or not competitive, but like this is something that will play well at a table with your friends, but that still uses a lot of the same flavor and of course the same commander. So check that out if you're interested. I think that was a pretty cool experiment, doing a 2-part flavor deck and then an upgraded version of the deck. So what does Aang Swift Savior do for us though? He's a 2/3 legendary human avatar ally, obviously the avatar, for 1, a white and a blue. He has flash and flying, pretty good. And when he enters, we airbend up to 1 other target creature or spell. To airbend something, that means we exile it, and its owner can cast it for 2 generic mana while it's exiled that way, rather than its mana cost. It does not change the timing rules on that though. So if we exile a creature, our opponent, if it's one of our opponent's creatures, they're going to have to wait until they have priority in their main phase to cast that creature at sorcery speed, albeit for just 2 generic mana. If we do one of our own creatures, because maybe we want to rebuy it and get its interest triggers again, we can do the same thing, but of course we've got to do it at the regular time. But we can hit spells with this as well. So this is a protective effect, meaning if someone casts a spell. Maybe they cast a huge creature, maybe they cast a removal spell on us, on one of our creatures, whatever it may be. We can flash in Aang and airbend that spell off the stack. That's great. If our opponent doesn't have enough mana to recast it right away, they're not going to get to recast it right away. They're going to have to wait. And that's pretty great. So Aang is pretty good for us to be able to flicker if we wish to, because Aang will re-enter and airbend something else. This is similar to that Meteor Sword plan where we were flickering it and blowing up whatever's most dangerous for us. This time we're not blowing it up, we're just airbending it, and that's fine. However, Aang has another ability, which is to waterbend him for 8 generic. We can transform him. Waterbending means we can spend 8 generic mana, but for each mana that we would spend, we can either pay with mana, we can pay it by tapping an artifact, or we can pay one by tapping a creature. So if we have a lot of creatures, we can just tap 8 of them and spend no mana if we wanted to transform Aang. Or if we're playing an equipment deck, we can tap all those equipment to waterbend Aang. We may not have 8 equipment, but being able to do this for just 1 or 2 or 3 mana plus 5 or 6 or 7 equipment is pretty sweet, especially because, like I said before, equipment function when they're equipped or not the same whether they're tapped or untapped. Unless they have a tap ability, it doesn't matter if they're tapped or not, so we might as well use them, and this waterbend ability lets us use them in that way. But what do we get if we transform Aang? Well, he becomes Aang and La, Ocean's Fury, a 5/5 legendary Avatar Spirit ally with reach, trample, no flying anymore, but when it attacks, we put a 1/1 counter on each tapped creature we control, which means probably our commander as well, making our commander into a 4/4 flyer, and that's pretty great. It also means that if we have attacked with Aang and La is probably tapped, so it becomes a 6/6 reach, trample that's put a counter on everything else as well. Everything else tapped as well that we control. So yeah, it is possible for us, if we want, if we don't need Aang and La in play once we've transformed it, we can flicker this, and it will come back as its front side and airbend something again. Not something we usually do if we've spent the time to transform it, but maybe we are in a situation where it's a long game of Commander, we have an awful lot of equipment in play, whether or not they're all equipped, and we're able to attack with our commander, flicker Aang and La, have it come back in as Aang Swift Savior, airbend something. Next turn, we transform Aang again. It's Aang and La, we attack, get the attack trigger here, use our commander's attack trigger to flicker it, thus protecting it, airbend something again. It's a possibility. Next, we have Assassin Gauntlet. Of course, it enters and we tap all creatures that target opponent controls, in addition to having it snap onto one of our creatures. Bespoke Bow doesn't snap on, but it does bounce a non-land permanent to its owner's hand, which could be one of our opponents. Could belong to one of our opponents. Celestial Armor gives hexproof and indestructible to the creature that it attaches to when it enters and attaches to that creature automatically. Cryptic Coat enters and cloaks the top card of our library and equips itself to it. Pretty good, we can blink that. Next we have Imri, Lurker of the Loch. For 2 and a blue, we have a 1/2 legendary Merfolk Wizard that has affinity for artifacts. Affinity for artifacts means Imri costs a generic less to cast for each artifact we control. So in this deck, Imri usually costs a single blue. Maybe not all the time, but oftentimes so. And when Imri enters, we mill 4 cards, which is not a strategy we're using in this deck, except for the fact that Imri lets us tap her, and we get to choose an artifact in our graveyard, and we can cast that card this turn. We still pay the cost, timing rules still apply, obviously, but we have access to the ability to recur cards from our graveyard, but not just to recur them, to recur the ones we milled. So in a way, Imri is saying, look at the top 4 cards of your library. One of those artifacts in there, you could recast it this turn. In fact, any of those artifacts. In fact, any artifacts that have gone to your graveyard. If we milled 2 artifacts this turn, and we use Imri to bring one of them back, next turn we can tap Imri again and bring back a different one. Imri is blinkable in the sense that we can have her come back in and mill us more, so she has more options for us once she's able to untap that we can recast from our graveyard, either because they've been destroyed or because she put them there, giving us access to them in a way that's not quite the same as the Adaptive Omni tool looking at the top 6, but kind of functions similarly and at least gives us access to the cards that we see on later turns as well. So the play for Imri in this deck usually is play her once our commander's already in play for just a single mana, because at that point we've probably got her just for, her affinity ability is reduced to just a blue. We have her come in and mill us 4. Next turn, we untap with her. We tap her to target an artifact in our graveyard. We can cast that this turn, or not. But either way, if we flicker her, she will come back in, tapped, but she wasn't blocking very well anyway, and we'll mill again, so that next turn we can do it again. Tap her, let us cast something from our graveyard, flicker her, mill more with her, tap her again the next turn, and so forth. I do want to make it clear, though, this does not let us do it as part of the resolution of the ability. It just says this turn. So we can choose our Meteor Sword, let's say, in our graveyard, and then go to combat, flicker Emery, mill 4 again, and then post-combat cast that Meteor Sword, even though it's a new instance of Emery being in play, because her ability when we activated it the first time gave us permission until the end of turn to cast that spell from our graveyard. Nice. Next up is Lauren of the Third Path, my favorite Reclamation Sage. This is from the Brothers' War. It's 2 and a white for a 2/1 legendary human artificer with vigilance. And when Lauren enters, we destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. Great. Just free disenchant on a stick. That's what we want. We can flicker her and blow up more artifacts and enchantments. If they are artifact creatures or artifact enchantments, great. If they're artifact creatures or enchantment creatures, we've gotten rid of a creature. If it's like a Panharmonicon or a big scary Mirari's Wake, we can get rid of things over and over by flickering her with our commander. And when we untap with her, we can tap her, and we and target opponent each draw a card. So if we needed any more card draw, Lauren can give it to us and even make friends with someone else. So pretty nice to be able to attack with her if we needed to. Maybe we've equipped her with something with vigilance, then tap her and draw a card, flicker her with our commander. We can get all of these benefits in the same turn. Yeah. Next up is Reflector Mage. A classic, super annoying, but very powerful. 1, a white and a blue for a 2/3 human wizard that says when it enters, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand, and that creature's owner cannot cast spells with the same name as that creature until your next turn. So that means if we bounce an opponent's commander, they don't get to recast their commander during their next turn. Pretty good. If we bounce their huge, Galta, maybe, they don't get to recast that Galta during their next turn. They've got to wait a turn cycle. So this can be pretty annoying, especially if we are flickering this and doing it every turn and getting the things that are scariest out of our way. It's almost like we've tapped those things down and put a stun counter on them, but even better, because we're forcing our opponent to have to pay after their next turn to get that creature back. Cool. Next is Dancer's Chakrams. We've already seen it. It lets us, we can flicker this if we wish to, and it's similar to our other equipment that come in and do a thing that isn't just attaching. Like Cryptic Coat comes in and essentially makes us a creature. Dancer's Chakrams does the same because it has Job Select. Next we have Herbie Scout Unit. This is a new Marvel Superheroes card. I guess this is for the Fantastic Four, I assume. I don't know who Herbie is. Let me know in the comments if you know what Herbie's deal is. Wait, that's a Fantastic Four right there. Is that Reed Richards? I assume it is. Yes. Good job, me. I kind of got there. This is a 2/1 artifact creature robot scout for 4 generic mana with flying that says when it enters, draw a card, and then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. So sort of a growth spiral effect. That is pretty good. Draws us a card, lets us put a land into play. Oftentimes we've got a lot of extra land in our hand because we're drawing so many cards in this deck. So Herbie can really help us get those lands into play even though they come in tapped. That's all right. Herbie is doing a little bit of an impression of a Solemn Simulacrum, which we also have in our deck. But first, let's talk about Phyrexian Metamorph. This is 3 and a Phyrexian Blue for a 0/0 artifact creature Phyrexian Shapeshifter. Phyrexian Blue we can either pay for with a single blue mana or with 2 life. So if we want, we can pay 3 generic and 2 life and 0 blue and just have cast this for 3 mana. And that's pretty good. If we do, whenever we cast it, we can have it enter as a copy of an artifact or creature on the battlefield, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. So what this means is, Phyrexian Metamorph, if we have a great creature in play that's non-legendary, we can make a copy of it with the Metamorph. If an opponent has a great creature in play, we can make a copy of it with the Metamorph. But this can come in as an artifact as well, so we can make a copy of one of our equipment with this if we want an extra equipment. It won't be a creature, it'll just be that equipment, but that's pretty good. And either way, this is an artifact. Whether it's an artifact or an equipment artifact or a creature, either way, our commander can flicker this. So we can say, wow, this has been really good for us as an additional, I don't know, brass knuckles. But we want it to be something else because someone just played a really huge, awesome creature. Well, we just attack with our commander, flicker the metamorph, it will re-enter, and we can have it enter as a copy of that creature, or as a copy of the Panharmonicon that someone played somewhere else. Totally cool for us to be able to do and get whatever value we're able to get. Like we can maximize the value from Phyrexian Metamorph basically every turn because we get to keep flickering it. Nice. But I mentioned the Solemn Simulacrum, and here it is. 4 generic mana for a 2/2 artifact creature golem. So Herbie is a 2/1, but Herbie flies. And the Sad Robot says, when it enters, we may Rampant Growth. Search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. And when it dies, we can draw a card. So usually, we're not trying to have it draw us a card. We're trying to flicker it with our commander and just get a Rampant Growth effect for free every turn, every time we attack with our commander. This is not the absolute best thing that we can flicker, but neither is Herbie, and the repeated value of this is not to be understated, especially because each of these lands is one more mana we have that we're not having to use a land drop on, that we're just getting the value from simply because we're attacking, which is what we were going to do anyway. And those lands can help us power out even more equipment, which can draw us more cards off of our commander. So in sort of an obvious roundabout way, Solemn Simulacrum is a good way for us to flicker our way into more card draw over time. There you go. Next we have Starfield Vocalist. Doesn't give us any benefit for entering the battlefield, but there's a reason we have it in this section. This is a 3/4 human bard for 3 and a blue that says if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. This is our Panharmonicon for the deck. It's 50 cents USD at time of recording. I don't know why this card is not played in more decks. Trigger doubling is so powerful, especially in a deck like ours, because we have a commander that triggers when our equipment enters the battlefield. Meaning Starfield Vocalist says, oh, all of your equipment enter and you draw 2 cards now instead of 1. If you have any equipment that enter and do something, like your Meteor Sword, it's going to enter and do that thing twice. We'll blow up 2 things. We have Herbie enter the battlefield. Herbie is going to draw us a card and give us permission to put a land into play tapped twice. Solemn Simulacrum is going to have us Rampant Growth twice. Reflector Mage is going to enter and bounce 2 different things. Dancer's Chakrams will enter, make a creature, equip to it, then make another token creature and equip to that one, leaving the first one behind. Starfield Vocalist gives us so much value with doubling these enters triggers. Yeah, it's crazy not to put it in here. But it also has Warp for 1 and a blue. Warp is an alternate casting cost, meaning instead of 3 and a blue, we can cast this for 1 and a blue. It will enter the battlefield, and at our end step, it will go to exile. And from exile, we have permission to cast it on a later turn for its full cost of 3 and a blue. So we could warp this in, flicker some stuff, cast some stuff, play some stuff, whatever it may be, get all of our enters triggers doubled, and then this goes away and we can do it again later. And we might do that because maybe we didn't have enough mana to play it for its full value, but we did play it for its full value and then play other things to get their enters triggers. But we did have 2 mana plus the mana for those other things, so that seems pretty solid. But it's in this section because of this trick. If we warp in the Starfield Vocalist and then flicker the Starfield Vocalist, it will go to exile and then re-enter the battlefield, tapped under our control, as a new game object, which means its delayed trigger from the warp ability will go on the stack at our end step and be unable to find the Vocalist, because the Vocalist that we warped in was from our casting of it. The Vocalist it is now has left the battlefield and a new one has come back. That's how the game treats it. So we can cheat our Starfield Vocalist by just warping it in and using our commander's attack ability to bring the Vocalist back in tapped, but still in without us having to pay the 3 and a blue at all, or have it go to exile and stay in exile. So pretty cool for us to be able to do. And if you want to see more effects like that, there are lots and lots of cool cards in in the history of the decks I've made where I do this with it. But the one that I want to mention most of all is a card that I wanted to put in this deck, but it just ended up not needing it. It's Dawn and Leo. It's a card from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set. Like I mentioned, it's in the considering section on this Moxfield list. So I recommend you look at that and check out the video's description for a link to the video I made on Dawn and Leo. So yeah. Next up, we have Whirler Rogue. This is 2 and double blue for a human rogue artificer that is a 2/2 that when it enters makes us 2 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. So it's 4 mana for a 2/2 and 2 1/1s, which means every time we flicker the Whirler Rogue, we get 2 more Thopters. And then we do it again the next turn, we get 2 more Thopters. A great way to get more value than just a single token every time we flicker it. In addition, it says tap 2 untapped artifacts you control, and target creature can't be blocked this turn. This is crazy strong because the normal idea with it is, oh, you tap your Thopters and make something unblockable. But in our deck, we tap our equipment because they function just as well tapped as they do untapped. And so with Whirler Rogue in play, every 2 equipment we have is 1 more creature that can't be blocked when we attack with it. So at the very least, what we probably do is tap 2 of the equipment attached to Thor, swing in with her, do her damage unblockably, and then we just keep moving. You know, that's 1 more step closer to winning with commander damage against someone. Plus, we've got these Thopters that are still untapped that we can use to chump block or attack themselves or whatever we need. Next up is a new one from the recent Secrets of Strixhaven Commander product, or Secrets of Strixhaven standard set. This is Emeritus of Ideation. This card is crazy. It's 3 and double blue for a 5/5 human wizard with flying ward 2 that enters prepared. We'll talk about prepared in a second. So already it's a 5 mana 5/5 flyer with ward 2 that's already crazy powerful and protects itself. And it says whenever it attacks, we can exile 8 cards from our graveyard, and if we do, it becomes prepared. So prepared means while a creature is prepared, its prepare spell, which we have right here, we can cast a copy of it from exile, and doing so unprepares the creature. So the idea is this comes in prepared, we can cast its spell, and then if we want to re-prepare it, we just exile 8 cards from our graveyard when we attack with it, and it becomes prepared again. Its prepare spell is Ancestral Recall, the most powerful spell in Magic. A single blue for an instant that makes target player draw 3 cards. Amazing. So we cast this, and we can, if we have an extra blue, right away, just cast it and draw 3. And now that unprepares it, sure, and we can attack with it and exile cards from our graveyard, but forget that, let's just flicker it with our commander. Let's attack with our commander, have Thor flicker the Emeritus of Ideation. It will come back in, tapped, don't get me wrong, but it does enter prepared. So if we wanted to, right there, before Thor has even, before we've even gone to the declare blocker step, if we've got a blue mana sitting around, we can draw 3 cards right away. This is an incredible way for us to draw cards over and over and over. And is it necessary? No. Our card draw engine in our command zone is so good, and we have so many other ways of putting cards in our hand that this is just excessive. Is it excessive? Yes, it's definitely excessive. But man, is it fun. If you've ever played Vintage Cube, if you, play Canlander, or anything else that lets you play with Ancestral Recall, come on. Being able to play it and do it multiple times in a game, like the first Ancestral isn't going to kill you, isn't going to kill your opponent, but the second and third ones probably will. In our deck, it is absolutely gilding the lily, and it's a blast to do. So if you want to replace this with a different Blinkable, or maybe that Dawn and Leo I mentioned a minute ago to get even more blinks, or if you want to replace it with a different equipment, totally fine to do, save yourself $4. But if you got $4, this is a really, really fun time, and I recommend it. Next up is Machinist's Arsenal. We've seen it. It's a job select card, so it'll make tokens for us. Next, we have another one of our tricks. This is Peregrine Drake. 4 and a blue for a 2/3 Drake with flying that says when it enters, untap up to 5 lands. So the first time we cast this, we have to front 5 mana, and then we get all 5 mana back. It refunds us immediately, assuming we paid for it with mana from lands. We tap 5 lands to pay for the mana, we get to untap those right away, and we get to keep casting spells. So imagine we have our commander in play already, She's got some equipment on her, let's say, and we cast the Peregrine Drake. Tap 5 mana, or tap 5 lands rather, pay for the Drake, it enters, we untap those lands. We tap them again to cast some more equipment, maybe put them on our commander. Great. We go to combat, attack with our commander, flicker the Peregrine Drake, it re-enters, untap those 5 lands again. And post-combat, cast some more spells, equip some more things, whatever we need. Peregrine Drake, if it's a flicker target for us, if we blink this, is here's a free 5 mana immediately during combat every turn. You can wait till post-combat if you want to, but definitely use that 5 mana before combat because you're going to get it back. Really, really cool. Next up is Riptide Gearhulk. This is 1 double white and double blue for a 2/5 artifact creature construct with double strike and prowess. Prowess really good in a deck that has so many non-creature artifact spells, especially with double strike. And when it enters, for each opponent we put up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls into its owner's library, third from the top. So we tuck a non-land permanent that each of our opponents controls. If those were tokens, they are gone forever. If they are non-tokens, they are at least off the battlefield for probably a couple of turns. And if they were commanders, then our opponent doesn't have to put them into their library. They have the option to instead put them into the command zone. And if they choose not to, then it's just in their library. And if something causes them to shuffle their library, they don't have a chance to put their commander back in the command zone at that point. When your commander enters, or would enter, a hidden zone, like your library, you can either choose to put it there, or as a replacement effect, put it into the command zone. But once it's there, it's there. I'm still living off the high of a time where I cast Commit to Memory on an opponent's commander, tucked it second from the top of their library. She said, I'll just draw it in a couple of turns, and then I cast the other half of it, and made everyone wheel, shuffling their hand and library into their graveyard and drawing in a fresh hand. And so my friend said, so my commander's just gone? I'm like, not gone, they're right there in your library. So yeah. Anyway, Riptide Gearhulk, very cool blocker, high toughness, good defense with double strike. It can attack very well, of course, double strike and prowess. And if we flicker it, we are not able to block with it because it's now tapped, but maybe we don't need to as badly because we just tucked 3 different things for, if we have 3 opponents, 1 from each opponent's playmat. And we can flicker it and do that again and again and again. This is sort of like the bigger version of Reflector Mage, if you want to think of it that way. It doesn't prevent our opponents from casting those spells again on their next turn, as long as they can draw them. So yeah. Next up is Coveted Jewel. Oh god, this is so funny. Coveted Jewel is 6 generic mana for an artifact that when it enters we draw 3 cards and it taps for 3 mana of any one color. So it refunds us 3 mana right away. Great, and it draws us 3. Amazing. Drawing 3 cards sounds like something everyone would want to do. However, the jewel is coveted, so whenever 1 or more creatures an opponent controls attack us and aren't blocked, that player draws 3 cards and gains control of Coveted Jewel and untaps it. So, this is a reason for our opponents to attack us, which is not something we want to do. It even draws them cards and gives them mana when they do it. That's too bad. But now they're going to be attacked by our other opponents, because those opponents will want the jewel as well. So sometimes, if we've got some tokens sitting around, or if we are getting attacked by something that's not that scary, we don't worry about the tokens thing because it has to be unblocked. Sometimes we're willing to let our opponent get in. Maybe we'll block some of their creatures, but as long as 1 creature attacks us and isn't blocked, then they get the jewel, and they get to draw 3 cards, which is something they're going to want to do. And now the pressure's off us because our opponents are probably going to attack them. However, our commander has a triggered ability when we attack that lets us flicker a non-token artifact or creature. Does not say that we control. And it does say it returns to the battlefield under its owner's control. Which means if someone steals our coveted jewel, we can attack with Thor and steal the jewel right back. When it comes back in, it will come in tapped, because that's how Thor works, which means we won't be able to tap it for mana, but we will draw 3 cards because it will enter. Now we can do this even if the jewel hasn't left our possession. If we have the jewel already and it's time to go to combat, we tap it for mana to cast some spells, we attack, flicker it, draw 3 cards, we're doing great. If next turn we still have it, tap it for mana, attack, flicker it, draw 3 more cards. Love it. And if someone takes it from us, we can always take it back. Now, we may not want to, like I mentioned, because we want our opponents to attack each other with when this is floating around the table. But sometimes 3 cards sounds pretty good. And there's not a lot of cards in our deck that if we flicker them, we just get 3 free cards. There's one that's almost free. But anyway, the Coveted Jewel is really cool in this deck and very, very funny. Next, we have Sun Titan. I want to put this card in so many decks and just don't. I should have been playing back when this was in Standard, and I think I would have more like nostalgia for it. I know how powerful it is. I'm just excited to be able to play it in this deck is what I'm saying. So yeah, this is 4 and double white for a 6/6 giant with vigilance, and it is a Titan, so it has a Titan trigger, which is to say an ability that triggers when it enters or when it attacks. And that ability is, you may return target permanent with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So we've got an awful lot of cards in this deck that are mana value 3 or less, but you know what is mana value 3 or less? Lands. So if we get a land into our graveyard, maybe from something like Emry milling us, then Sun Titan entering can get us that land back, and it doesn't even say it comes in tapped. We attack with Sun Titan, get another land back. Or maybe it's not a land. Maybe it's something else that went to the graveyard from Emry, from being killed by our opponents, whatever it may be. We can bring it back with Sun Titan over and over and over. Now, Sun Titan gives us that value when the Sun Titan attacks or when it enters. So and it has vigilance, so we probably want to attack with it. Maybe we can put some cool equipment on it. That would be great too. But since it's an enters trigger, it is in this section, we could just flicker the Sun Titan and get something back if we needed to. Notably, the last thing I want to mention about this, our commander is mana value 3 or less. So if we've got the Sun Titan in play, we can take a little bit of a gamble. If our commander gets killed, we can put her in the graveyard and let our Sun Titan bring her back. It's a possibility. And we've seen the Meteor Sword. It will blow up a permanent when it enters, and that's pretty good. And our last card in this section is Thought Monitor. 6 and a blue for a 2/2 artifact creature construct that, like Emry, has affinity for artifacts. But unlike Emry, it's a 7-drop. So if we have 6 different artifacts in play, this only costs a single blue mana, because it's discounted all the 6. That's pretty good. But what it is a 2/2 flyer that when it enters, we draw 2 cards. So even more card draw for us in this deck. We just can't get away from being able to keep our hand absolutely over full. And remember, another way that we might have cards fall into the graveyard thanks to get out with our Sun Titan is simply because we had too many cards in hand. How do we hold all these answers? We put them in the graveyard and get it back with the Sun Titan. Great. And that covers our Blinkables section. And so, oh hey, did you just like the video? Nice, thanks so much. I'm just kidding, you don't have to like the video if you don't want to. I appreciate you being here either way. Thank you for joining me. So let's move on to our support sections for the deck. These categories here. We're going to start with our card advantage section. This is something I usually tag as draw, not because all these cards do the draw a card action, but they give us access to more cards as though we were drawing them. And sometimes they do actually draw them for us. So Adaptive Omni Tool, when the equipped creature attacks, we look at the top 6 and we can put an artifact into our hand. Great. Cryogen Relic does draw us a card when it enters or when it leaves the battlefield. Love it. Dour Port Mage is 1 and a blue for a 1/3 Frog Wizard that says, whenever 1 or more creatures you control leave the battlefield without dying, draw a card. So that is to say, when we flicker them, we get to draw a card. Extra card draw on these creatures getting flickered. On top of us drawing cards when our equipment enter, yeah, we can draw an awful lot of cards with our Port Mage. And we can protect our creatures with it, because for 1 and a blue and tap, we can bounce another target creature we control to its owner's hand. That's great, especially if we want to protect Thor with it. Maybe someone is going to target her, and we've got a couple of mana left open, and the Dour Port Mage, we can activate the Port Mage, put her back in our hand so we don't have to put her in the command zone, and thereby pay more mana with the commander tax to recast her, and because she's leaving the battlefield without dying, we get to draw a card off of it. Great. Next we have Loki, God of Mischief. Loki is the only other god in the deck besides our commander. This is a 2/1 God Sorcerer villain, legendary of course, for 1 and a blue, that says whenever a player or permanent becomes the target of an ability you control, draw a card, but only once each turn. Did you know that equipping targets? So in this deck, every time we equip one of our creatures, at least the first time each turn, when Loki's in play, we're going to draw a card off that. We're drawing cards when our equipment enter from our commander and our Pure Steel Paladin, when our equipment gets equipped from Loki, when our creatures leave the battlefield without dying from our Port Mage, when we attack with the Adaptive Omni tool. Yeah, lots and lots of ways to repeatedly draw in this deck. We've seen the Paladin, gives us a draw trigger when we have equipment enter under our control. Cryptic Coat doesn't actually draw us cards, but it does take cards off the top of our library and put them into play as creatures. So it's sort of like it's making a token creature, but it's not really a token because we have access to that card without casting it as long as it's a permanent card, if we can flicker it. So a little bit roundabout, but it does give us access to cards. I just didn't want to tag this as a ramp effect that we're like getting things into play for free, because it is requiring us to use our commander to do so. But it is making us creatures, making cards into creatures, and we can turn them into what they actually are. Yeah, you get it. That's why it's in this section. Forensic Gadgeteer makes us clue tokens every time we cast an artifact spell, and makes them cheaper to crack, so we can draw cards off of that. Lauren of the Third Path lets us tap her to have us and an opponent each draw a card. Pretty good. Bioorganic Carapace, whenever the equipped creature does combat damage to a player, we draw a card for every modified creature we control. Herbie lets us draw a card and put a land from our hand onto the battlefield tapped when it enters. Sad Robot draws a card for us when it dies. Vibranium Strike Gauntlets let the equipped creature do combat damage to a player and cause that to draw us a card. Emeritus of Ideation has Ancestral Recall stapled to it. Good grief. Coveted Jewel comes with an Ancestral Recall effect when it enters. I mean, it's 6 mana, so it's not really the same, but it is drawing 3 cards. And Thought Monitor enters and draws us 2, and that's pretty good too. And that is our card advantage section. We're going to go now to our acceleration section. As usual, I've just tagged this as ramp. Soul Ring, of course, is what we're playing here. It's a single generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless. It's the symbol of the format. It's extremely powerful for us. We should run this as often as we can because it's great. If you look at any of the math that Joey from EDH Rec has done on Soul Ring, there's so many decks that need to run Soul Ring and are just better because they do. Not because efficacy is the biggest deal, but because anyone else who's running Soul Ring is just a step ahead. So you might as well run it. And it's in the format for a reason. The Commander Rules Committee, I think it's not called the Rules Committee anymore, the Commander Rules Group, Advisory Panel, whatever it is. They want Soul Ring in the format because they want there to be the occasional explosive start or explosive jump ahead when someone gets it out. That's the reason it's the most powerful fast mana we have in the format, that isn't banned. So in the format. So yeah, Soul Ring is great. Next up is Wayfarer's Bauble, awesome for any non-green deck. This is a single generic mana for an artifact that for 2 and tap and sack, we can Rampant Growth. Search for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So I love getting a Wayfarer's Bauble in my opening hand because it means turn 3, I'm probably going to have 4 lands in play. Play this on turn 1, turn 2, we crack it, get to Rampant Growth, we've got 3 lands, start our turn 3, play a land, and we got 4. We're doing great. Love this card. Arcane Signet is next, 2 generic for an artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So in this deck, white or blue. It's a 2 mana untapped rock. Of course we're going to run it. So is Azorius Signet, 2 mana artifact that taps for a white and a blue, but we have to pay a mana into it to tap it. So we're tapping 2 things and getting 2 mana, and that's pretty good. Fixes our mana. Gold Pan makes us a treasure when it enters. That's good. Skybreaker, which is to say Sword of the Animist, lets us Rampant Growth when the equipped creature attacks. Talisman of Progress is another 2 mana rock, 2 generic for an artifact, taps for colorless, or we can tap it for a white or a blue if we're willing to let it do a damage to us. And what I like to say about this is, we always are. Because if you don't need colored mana with this, just tap it for colorless. But if you do need colored mana, what does it mean to need colored mana? Well, it means that you wouldn't be able to cast a spell if you didn't tap this for colored mana. Which means you have to ask yourself, are you willing to pay 1 life in order to cast an extra spell every turn? I would do it over and over in Commander, because the more spells you cast, the farther along you are, so the more likely you are to win. So with Talisman of Progress, if you are down 5 life because you activated it for colored mana 5 times over the course of the game, that means you've also cast 5 spells you would not have otherwise been able to cast. Because if you didn't need the mana, you would have just tapped it for colorless. So yeah, always a good deal. Obviously, it's a risk, but everything has a cost, and this is a pretty cheap one to pay in a format where you have 40 life and a lot of cards that you want to cast. Next up, we have Herbie. Herbie lets us put a land from our hand on the battlefield tapped. Happens a lot, even if it's not the card we drew with Herbie. Sad Robot enters and rampant growths us. Great. We've seen Peregrine Drake. It isn't exactly ramp, but it kind of works like it, especially in a Blink deck that lets us untap lands after we've tapped them for mana. Coveted Jewel is a mana rock, taps for 3 of any one color. And we haven't seen Arc Reactor. This card is really cool, and it's great in our deck, especially. It's 5 generic mana for an artifact with Improvise. Improvise means it's like Convoke, but with artifacts. We can tap artifacts, and each artifact we tap pays for 1 generic mana of this cost, which is to say, in this deck, if we've got 5 equipment in play, we just tap them and Arc Reactor is free. Because we don't care if our equipment are tapped or not, they work the same either way. So we use Arc Reactor, or we use them to cast Arc Reactor, and we get an artifact that enters tapped. It's true, but it does tap for triple colorless mana. So this is a great Thran Dynamo for us that really helps us out, that we often don't have to cast for its casting cost at all. We don't have to spend mana on in this deck. Great. That covers our acceleration section. We have some discount cards in this deck. I don't usually like to run discount cards in my decks unless I have at least 40 hits for each card that gives me discounts. So let's start with Shuri, Wakandan Inventor. Amazing card, really beautiful art too. I really like this composition. This is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 legendary human artificer hero. She's a hero. That makes our artifact spells cost 1 generic mana less to cast. Like I say, this effect, where it just discounts things by 1, usually is not worth it in comparison to an equally priced mana rock, unless we're planning to get a way to double spell so frequently that the mana rock is usually better, unless we have at least 40 hits for what's being discounted. Well, looky here, we've got 40 artifacts in this deck. So yeah, Shuri actually doesn't discount every one of those artifacts because some of them cost a single colored mana. That actually may not be true. This actually might be working well for us. But anyway, Shuri helps us and is cool and is a Marvel card, and I like her. Also, she's got this ability. If we pay 1 and tap, target artifact we control becomes a copy of a second target artifact you control until end of turn, except it isn't legendary. Activate only as a sorcery. So this lets us say, hey, we've got our original and our token copy of our Brass Knuckles in play. We've got them both equipped to our commander, even though we've got a Blackblade Reforge attached to our commander as well. So both of those copies of Brass Knuckles are not really doing anything. Both of them are granting double strike, so no big deal. We activate Shuri and turn one of those copies of Brass Knuckles into a second non-legendary Blackblade Reforged, and now we still have double strike since we have one additional copy of Brass Knuckles attached to our commander, but we have double the bonus to our commander's power and toughness that we were getting from Blackblade Reforged because we have a second Blackblade Reforged attached to her. And we don't have to do that with equipment that are already equipped, but if we do, then those equipment, like I say, are already equipped. We don't have to pay the equip cost. This lets us even cheat equip costs if we have something like a Swiftfoot boots that we've equipped for 1, and then there's a meteor sword lying around, or an artificer's arsenal, whatever it's called, the 5 mana white equipment that gives +2/+2 for each artifact you control. We just turn our Swiftfoot boots into a copy of that, even if that's not already equipped to our commander, because the Swiftfoot boots are. Then we equip it to our commander next turn and turn the Swiftfoot boots into a second copy of it. Very, very powerful effect, especially in a deck like this. Thanks, Shuri. Next we have Ironheart Clever Champion. I wanted so much to build a deck for Ironheart because I think this art is really cute. She's so happy. If you want to see me build a deck out of Ironheart, let me know in the comments. I am not planning to presently for my Marvel decks, but if you really want me to build one more blue deck, because I've got a lot of blue decks for this series of, for this set, really, I will happily build Ironheart. I just was trying not to build a lot of decks that were so similar, even though I've got a couple of Voltron decks in the set. It's not usually something that happens in basically any set, but it did this time. Anyway, I really like Ironheart. I think she's just adorable. And a cool card too, don't get me wrong, but also really cute, so I'd love to build a deck for her. However, if I don't get any votes for that, no big deal. I've got plenty of other cards planned to build for. In any case, in this deck, she is 4 and a blue for a 3/4 legendary artifact creature, human hero. She's an artifact creature because that's how they represent the suit. And she has Improvise. So sort of like the Arc Reactor, we can use our equipment in this deck to pay for the generic mana cost in her casting cost. We might be able to cast her as a 3/4 flyer for just a single blue. And that's pretty good, because she gives all of our non-creature spells Improvise, which means we can cast many of our equipment by tapping our other equipment to do so. And then when the equipment we've cast enter the battlefield, we can then tap them for the next equipment we might be casting, even that same turn. This is a really, really cool effect that works so well in this deck that Ironheart is one of the couple of cards that I like to put in every one of my decks that just changes the texture of the deck, like the way it feels like it plays. When Ironheart comes out, and really can come out pretty cheaply, and then just sort of snowball things for us, it can be so much fun. Because remember, if we're using our equipment to cast our other equipment, those equipment are coming in and probably triggering our commander, assuming our commander's in play, and not just coming in for cheap and acting as a way for us to cast other things with Improvise, but also drawing us cards that we can cast. It can really sort of snowball. It's great. That covers our discount section. Let's go on now to our removal section, which is to say our interaction section. We have Dispatch to start off. This is a single white mana for an instant that taps a creature, but if we have Metalcraft, which is to say if we control 3 or more artifacts, instead we exile that creature. I'm sorry, not instead. We tap it and then we exile it. So yeah, it's gonna have to bow down before we send it out of the kingdom, I guess. There it is. So yeah, oftentimes in this deck we have so many artifacts that it's easy to have Metalcraft, so Dispatch can be a 1 mana instant exile effect, which is just Swords to Plowshares. Speaking of which, we have Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares. I like to say that these are almost the same card, in that they are both white, single mana instants that exile a target creature and give that creature's controller a little kickback. Swords to Plowshares gives that creature's controller life equal to the creature's power, and Path to Exile lets that creature's controller rampant growth. Search for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So both of these are unconditional instant speed creature exile removal for a single mana. So in this deck, Dispatch sort of joins that suite. Yeah, gotta run them all, it's great. We've seen the Cryogen Relic. We can use it to put a stun counter on a tapped creature, temporary removal. Aang can airbend a creature or spell, it's temporary removal. Bespoke Bow, more temporary removal by bouncing a non-land permanent. Emergency Eject is next. 2 and a white for an instant that says destroy target non-land permanent, and its controller creates a lander token, which is an artifact token that says pay 2, tap, and sack this token to rampant growth. Search for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So I really like Emergency Eject, and I think it's underplayed in Commander. I think that decks that are not trying to remove lands don't need to run Generous Gift, because Generous Gift is 2 and a white for an instant, destroying a permanent and give that permanent's controller a 3/3 elephant. I think if you're willing to do that, but not target lands with it, then you should run something that says destroy target non-land permanent. Stroke of Midnight is the same spell, but it only hits non-lands and it gives them a 1/1 creature. To which I say run Emergency Eject instead, because then you're not giving them a creature at all that could block or be sacrificed in some way. You're giving them an artifact token, which, yeah, they might be able to use it for something, but if they want a rampant growth with it, they've got to pay to do so. It's a Wayfarer's Bauble. So as opposed to, Path to Exile, which our mana is what's giving them the land, Emergency Eject, they've got to pay for the land themselves. So yeah, I think this card is really good in Commander, and I would like to see more people run it. Yeah. Lorna of the Third Path enters and disenchants an artifact or enchantment. Seems good. Reflector Mage bounces a creature that an opponent controls, and they don't get to cast it on their next turn. Mjolnir lets us tap down a creature that the defending player controls when we attack with our equipped creature, and stun that creature that we're tapping down, so that's pretty good. Riptide Gearhulk tucks, third from the top, into their owner's library, a non-land permanent that each of our opponents controls when it enters, and Meteor Sword just destroys target permanent when it enters. That'll blow up whatever you need. Great. That covers our interaction section. We do have a couple of Wraths in this deck. We're running Avatar's Wrath, which is going up in price, unfortunately, because it's a solid card, and it works well for our kind of thing we're doing. This is 2 and double white for a sorcery that says choose up to 1 target creature, then airbend all other creatures. So really, we just leave Thor in play, and we airbend everything else. Every creature in play is going to go to exile, all the tokens are gone forever, and all the other creatures can be recast at normal timing for only 2 generic mana. But that is to say, at sorcery speed on their controller's turns, unless those creatures themselves have flash, or those opponents have something like a Vidalcan Orrery or a Leyline of Anticipation, something to less than cast those creature spells at flash speed. But even if they have those, until our next turn, our opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands, so they cannot recast anything that we've exiled with airbending. And then we exile Avatar's Wrath. So for the cost of the mana value of just a regular Day of Judgment, we get rid of everything except our commander, presumably our commander, and all of the things that we exiled of our own can come back right away if we want to. Or on our next turn, because even by our next turn, everything we got rid of from our opponents hasn't come back either, thanks to this. Cool. Beyond that, we have Promise of Loyalty, which seemed like a thematic choice for a Thor deck. This is 4 and a white for a sorcery that says each player puts a vow counter on each creature they control and sacrifices the rest. Vow counters are not used, they don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, it's just used by this effect. It says each of those creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers they control for as long as they have a vow counter on them. So, every opponent gets to choose which creature they don't want to lose, and those creatures can't ever attack us, the ones they don't lose. That's pretty good. They also can't attack planeswalkers we control, but we don't have any of those. So there you go. Also, this might be, I don't know, this might be like the Avengers. This might be the Hulk. Who knows? Those are our Wraths, and that covers all of the cards in our support sections. We're going to go over our supplemental sections now, starting with our Payoffs. These are all cards that reward us for doing what we were going to do anyway. So for example, Dour Port Mage gives us a card whenever we have one or more creatures leave the battlefield without dying, which is to say, when we blink them. Loki gives us a card once per turn when we equip something, because that will trigger his ability when one of our permanents becomes the target of an ability we control. Pure Steel Paladin gives us a card when an equipment enters. Forensic Gadgeteer gives us a clue whenever we cast an artifact spell. And Kappa Cannoneer is 5 and a blue for a 4/4 artifact creature Turtle Warrior with Improvise. So we can, like with the other Improvise cards we've seen, like Ironheart, probably get this down to just a single blue, but even if it's just a 3 mana card, that's still pretty good. It's a 4/4 with Ward 4 that says whenever this creature or another artifact we control enters, we put a 1/1 counter on the Cannoneer and it can't be blocked this turn. So it rewards us, it pays us off for all these artifacts we have coming in. This is very strong for us. It doesn't really contribute to our game plan other than just becoming a huge, incredibly evasive, difficult to interact with beater, and that's sort of all we need it for, especially if we're able to get this out later on by tapping down a bunch of our equipment to make it cheap, and then it comes in, triggers itself, becomes a 5/5, and then after that, every artifact we have enter is going to just make it bigger and bigger. Those don't even have to have entered because we cast them. They could have just been flickered by our commander. Kappa Cannoneer gets bigger, becomes unblockable, we swing in and just supplement our damage a whole lot every turn. Or maybe we put some of our equipment on the Cannoneer and we're swinging in for 10, 15, 20 damage, maybe even more. That covers our payoff section. Next we have a synergy section. These are all cards that sort of care about what we're doing rather than reward us for doing it. So Adaptive Omni Tool counts the number of artifacts we control for its power and toughness bonus, as does Machinist Arsenal, as does Nettle Cyst, which it also counts the number of enchantments we control. Thran Power Suit counts the number of equipment attached to the creature that it's equipped to. Bioorganic Carapace, there we go, counts the number of modified creatures we control. Starfield Vocalist doubles our enters triggers, which is a synergistic bonus, and Phyrexian Metamorph is in this section because it synergizes with our deck in that it can be anything that's already on the battlefield from our deck or from an opponent's deck. Very cool. That covers our synergy section. We're going to go now to this uses section. These are all cards that give us a way to use our artifacts beyond just their normal expected uses. So for example, Emry has affinity for artifacts. So those artifacts just being on the battlefield makes her cheaper. The same is true for Thought Monitor. Arc Reactor, Kappa Cannoneer, and Ironheart all have Improvise, so we can use our artifacts, especially our equipment, we can tap them down to help pay for the costs of those things. And Ironheart even gives all of our non-creature spells Improvise. Aang has Waterbend, which means we can, similar to Improvise but activating an ability, use our artifacts, especially our equipment, to better activate or more cheaply activate that ability. And Whirler Rogue lets us use our artifacts by tapping 2 of them to make a creature unblockable. That's pretty cool, especially since for all of these things, it's relevant. None of our equipment lose efficacy when we tap them. Very cool. That is our uses section. Next we have Evasion. These are all just the cards that we use to get past our opponent's defenses. Assassin Gauntlet taps down all the creatures that target opponent controls. When it enters and attaches to a creature we control. Celestial Armor grants flying, not helpful to our commander since she already has it, but it's nice, we can put it on something else. Cryptic Coat makes the equipped creature unblockable. And now I know you're thinking, but doesn't that only apply to the creature that it's cloaked and attached itself to, since it doesn't actually have a traditional equip ability of its own? That is true. However, Pure Steel Paladin, that kind of effect, Pure Steel Paladin grants equip for 0 to all of our equipment, which includes Cryptic Code, so we could put this on our commander, possibly. It's not a guarantee, but at least it makes, every time it enters, it's going to make us essentially a 3/2 unblockable creature, and that's pretty awesome, pretty alright too, especially since we could equip it with other things if we wanted to. Like Leyline Axe, which gives Trample. Vibranium Strike Gauntlets also gives Trample, and Whirler Rogue can make something completely unblockable by letting us just tap down 2 artifacts to do so. Great. That is our Evasion section. Next we have this Pump section. This is a lot of cards here, but it's mostly our equipment. In fact, all of it is equipment except for Aang. Aang is in this section because we can flip Aang into Aang and Law, and it has an attack trigger to put a 1/1 counter on each tapped creature we control. I'm not going to go through all of the cards in this section because you've seen them all already, and they're just here to be grouped together as these are cards that increase the power or power and toughness of whatever they're equipped to. There you go. So that covers, I suppose, our Pump section. We also have a section of Protection. These are all cards that will protect, hopefully our commander, but maybe also us. Dragonfire Blade gives the equipped creature hexproof and monocolored. Lava Spur Boots gives that creature ward 1. Conqueror's Flail protects us, but making it so our opponents can't cast spells during our turn as long as it is attached to a creature. Dour Port Mage lets us bounce a creature to our hand to protect them from being destroyed or exiled or something. Ilvoid Lightjammer lets us snap it on when we cast it at flash speed and give the attached creature hexproof, or the equipped creature hexproof. Swiftfoot Boots gives that creature hexproof. Thran Power Suit gives that creature ward 2. Aang can airbend one of our creatures in order to protect it from an opponent removing it, which does not, stop that opponent from removing, or doesn't stop it from being removed, but it's removed to our hand so we can recast it rather than having just it go to the graveyard, or if it's our commander, to go back to the command zone. Celestial Armor, much like the Lightjammer, snaps on at flash speed and grants hexproof, but also grants indestructible until end of turn. Champion's Helm, like the boots, gives hexproof to the equipped creature, and Promise of Loyalty doesn't just wipe the board, it means that every creature that got to stay in play has a vow counter on it and cannot attack us. Obviously that's even for creatures that, were indestructible, because it says you have to sacrifice all the other creatures beyond the one you put a vow counter on, not just destroy them. So pretty good for us. And that is our Protection section. We do have a bit of Recursion in this deck. We've seen them all already. Emery lets us tap her in order to cast artifacts from our graveyard if we wish to. Sun Titan enters or attacks and lets us return a permanent mana value 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. And Forge Anew, when it enters, lets us return an equipment from our graveyard to the battlefield, just as that enters trigger. Notably, that's something that Starfield Vocalist will double, as is Sun Titan's enters trigger, as is Emery's middle trigger, and so forth. So yeah, I'm mentioning that about Forge Anew here because it is not in the Blinkables section, even though it has an interest trigger, because with Thor, we can't blink enchantments. And this is the only enchantment in the deck. Just so there you go. Yeah, that is our Recursion section. We do have a couple of ways to make tokens. They're not that exciting in this deck, but we can make more of them if we wish to by flickering any of these. Nettlecyst makes a 0/0 Phyrexian Germ. Probably don't want to flicker it in order to make more of those. But Dancer Chakrams and Machinist's Arsenal are both job select cards, so they make those 1/1 tokens. And Whirler Rogue, it's the best one for us to flicker because it doesn't just make 2 tokens, they are flyers, the 1/1 flying Thopters. So there we go. And that covers all of the spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our basics. We are running 12 islands and 10 plains for a total of 22 basics. A little high on the basic count side, but totally fine for our deck. And I think having basics in your deck is powerful. It's something that people overlook too much. So yeah, people get too greedy with their mana bases. So yeah, this is pretty solid. With the amount of cards in our deck that do not need colored mana, we could run 11 and 11 and that would be just fine. We're slightly higher on blue cards in this deck, so we're doing 12 and 10, but it's fine either way. I typically, if the basic count is not even, like to sort of adjust it so it's a little closer to being even than the proportions of the deck would require, simply because I want to make sure I can get my cheap spells of the minority color out at least as fast as the majority colors. But in this deck, it doesn't really make that much difference, so yeah, you could do 11-11 and it would be fine. And obviously, I'm running the Marvel Superheroes arts, because that's what we're doing here. Yeah, we're running Irrigated Farmland. This is a bicycle land, which is to say it is a plains and an island. It's a tap land, but because it's a plains and an island, it inherently taps for white or blue. And we can also cycle it for 2 generic, meaning if it's in our hand, we can pay 2 and discard it to draw a card. Something we would do if we draw this late game and we just don't need land anymore, we've got plenty of it, we can cycle this away and draw a card. Or if it's early game and we're desperate for card draw, which never happens in this deck. But you never know what kind of draws you're going to get. You might draw 15 lands in a row, who knows. In that case, probably better to just cycle Irrigated Farmland and hope to draw something better. But yeah, it's also a plains and an island, so it's a tapped duel, and that's totally fine. Glacial Fortress is a check land. It taps for white or blue, and it enters tapped unless we control a plains or an island, which is to say any of these basics, but also Irrigated Farmland, because it is also a plains and an island. So we have a Tango land in this deck as well, and that plus the bicycle land and our basics mean that 24 of the cards in our library, as long as they're in play, make the Glacial Fortress an untapped duel for 23 US at time of recording. That's hard to beat in terms of the value of it. Yes, but if you were to want to upgrade this, I would suggest Deserted Beach, the slow land. It is probably not in this deck, but in many decks, and maybe sometimes in this deck, more likely to come in as an untapped duel. But it is a little pricey now, since it hasn't been reprinted since, I think, Midnight Hunt. However, at time of recording, Reality Fracture has yet to drop this year, and I believe since we got the enemy-colored slow lands a couple months ago in Secrets of Strixhaven, we're going to get the allied-colored slow lands in Reality Fracture, so the price will probably drop then, at which point I say just cut one of your islands and run that as well, because Glacial Fortress is so great in this deck. And if you were going to want to upgrade Irrigated Farmland, what's it called? Hallowed Fountain, the shock land, is what I would go with. More expensive, but also a tapped duel. We're running Skycloud Expanse as well. This is a filter land. It's exactly like our Azorius Signet, but on a land. Pay 1, tap it, it makes both of our colors. Great, gives us our colors, that's all we need to do. We're running these 4 fixing lands. Obviously, Command Tower. This is a untapped land with the same text as Arcane Signet. It makes either white or blue, and it comes in untapped, so it's an untapped duel all the time. Of course we're running this, because a tapped duel is also fine, like Path of Ancestry. This is a tap land with the same text as Command Tower and Arcane Signet, but it also says when we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry one. So we get a free scry when we cast Thor with this card, since, of course, she is a human hero god, so she shares types with herself. We also have 9 other humans in this deck, 2 of which are heroes, and Loki, who is a god, so that's 10 more cards beyond our commander that Path of Ancestry will give us a scry with, so that seems pretty good. We've got Myriad Landscape next. This is a tap land that taps for colorless, or if we pay 2, tap and sack it, we get to search our library for 2 basic land cards that share a land type. So in this deck, either 2 basic plains or 2 basic islands, and then we put those cards on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. So even though those lands come in tapped, and this land comes in tapped, and we have to pay and sack it to go find those lands, this is 1 land drop that becomes 2 lands in play, both of which make a colored mana for us, so this is acceleration in our mana base, it's just slow. We also have Temple of the False God, which is also kind of slow acceleration. It's a land that comes in untapped and taps for 2 colorless mana, so it's a soul land, like Sol Ring. We just can't activate it unless we control 4 or more other lands. That's 5 plus itself. So even though this doesn't accelerate us early game, and our opening hand, if it's something like a Myriad Landscape and a Temple of the False God and nothing else for mana, we probably want to mulligan that. But if this is our 5th land, then we're jumping from making 4 mana to making 6, and being able to multi-spell, especially with making 2 mana from this, that our 2 mana we can spend on so many of our artifacts and our equipment that don't require colored mana. This is a strong card for the level of deck we're building, so yeah, might as well go with it. We are running Adakar Wastes next. This is a pain land. It is the same text on a land as our Talisman of Progress. Taps for colorless, or a white or a blue if we are willing to let it do a damage to us. Everything I said about the Talisman is just as true here. This is essentially an untapped dual land for us, so yeah, might as well run it. Port Town is next. This is a reveal land. It taps for white or blue, and as it enters, we can reveal a plains or an island from our hand, and if we don't, it comes in tapped. So this is not quite as good as our check land, our Glacial Fortress, but it's still fine. We're drawing so many cards in this deck that the likelihood of us not having one of our many 22 basics, or our Bicycle or our Tango land in hand when we play this is pretty low. But we might have this in our opening hand, and then it's just a tap land on turn 1, which is fine if we're not playing a turn 1, if we don't have a turn 1 play. So this is, again, not as good as that check land, but a solid inclusion. And if you were to want to upgrade this, I would say Flood Farm Verge is good. The Verge lands are getting played in Standard. They're quite expensive, but it would be a great upgrade if you're looking for an upgrade that's not like a typed duel. But if you are looking for typed duel upgrades, well, Temple of Enlightenment could use one. This is a tap land that taps for our colors and scries 1 when it comes in, which is totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. These temples are perennially reprinted, they're in foundations, they're as cheap as they can be, and they're good. They just give you a free little bit of card selection, they make your colors in a 2-color deck, you're set with them, and great art from Theros Beyond Death. But if you were to want to upgrade this to Meticulous Archive, the Surveil land version, then it's got basic types on it, and it surveils, which is a little better than scrying. So yeah, different options. Last here we have Prairie Stream. This is another Plains Island because this is our Tango land. It's got both basic types, so it taps for white or blue, and it enters tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. Which is to say, it's the same text as a slow land, but it requires the lands in play to be basics, but we have 22 basics in the library. Again, very likely for this to come in as an untapped duel. And again, if you wanted to upgrade it to your Hallowed Fountain, that's totally fine. Last, we have these 5 utility lands. We're running Archway of Innovation, which is a land that comes in tapped unless we control an island, and taps for blue, and we can pay a blue and tap it, and the next spell we cast this turn has Improvise. Another great thing that if we don't have Ironheart out, we can give any of our spells, even our creature spells, Improvise. That seems pretty good for 2 extra mana, which is to say white, or rather a blue, and tapping the Archway, which is the equivalent of 2 mana, like add 2, and then you can suddenly tap a bunch of your artifacts, your equipment, to cast the next spell you cast. That seems pretty good to me. We also have Buried Ruin. This is a little more recursion for us. A land that comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap and sack it to return an artifact card from our graveyard to our hand. So yeah, if we get some artifacts that end up in our graveyard, maybe from Emery, and then maybe Emery dies and we can't get them back out and we need them, or maybe they get disenchanted or naturalized, whatever it may be, great. Buried Ruin helps us get our favorite one back out, and that's pretty good. Demolition Field is next. So I often like to say that the power level of decks I build is usually desired by a pod of people playing at a level that typically just doesn't want any kind of land destruction in their games, which is fine. Not everyone wants that in their Magic, or especially in their casual Magic, which is what Commander is. However, you do have to have an answer to problems, because threats in Magic require answers. And sometimes a land base can include something that's a problematic non-basic. Like, I like to say, a Rogue's Passage in a Voltron deck, making that commander unblockable. That can empower that player's game plan so much that it becomes dangerous for us. Or, we're trying to do damage to a player, and if they're running a Glacial Chasm, or some kind of Maze of Ith effect, or Labyrinth of Scophos, those cards can stop us from executing our plan. Something that empowers someone else to win with their game plan, or takes away our ability to win with ours, is something we need to answer. And having a single card in our deck that can do so is not too much if we're trying to avoid blowing up lands, especially if the way we're doing it is with Demolition Field, because this is an untapped land that taps for colorless. Or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls, and that opponent then gets to search their library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield untapped. And so do we. So we replace our demo field, they get to replace their non-basic that we destroyed. Neither of us are down mana, as long as the thing we blew up didn't make a whole bunch of extra mana, like a Gaia's Cradle, which if it did, then we did the right thing. But as long as we both had basics left in our libraries, no one's missing a land after this is over, we're all set. Even the kind of pods that don't want to see land destruction, which I'll admit is also me, it's not what I'm looking for, I don't think that's much fun, aren't going to have a problem with a singular answer to something, because if it comes up, that's okay, and if it doesn't come up, no big deal, low cost of inclusion. Next we have Monumental Henge. This is sort of the mirror of Archway of Innovation. This is a land that comes in tapped unless we control the plains. It taps for white, or we can pay 2 and double white and tap it to look at the top 5 cards of our library. Noticeably, that's 4 mana plus the Henge, so tapping essentially 5 mana to look at the top 5. We can reveal a historic card from among them and put it in our hand and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Historic cards are cards that are artifacts, are legendaries, or are sagas. We don't have any sagas in this deck. We do have some legends though, and we have a lot of artifacts. Overall, in this deck, there are 46 cards that are historic. That includes our commander, so about 45 cards, which means by the time we're able to activate Monumental Henge, it's going to be about half of our library. So the chance of us not seeing a historic card in our top 5 is low enough that it's essentially not going to happen. So this is expensive, don't get me wrong, tapping 5 lands essentially to activate the Henge and maybe draw ourselves a card. But if we're just hunting for something, this is a good way to pretty much find it. Finally, I just mentioned Rogue's Passage. Here we go. This is an untapped land, taps for colorless, or we can pay 4, tap, and target creature can't be blocked this turn. The 3 ways you can use Rogue's Passage are the most obvious one first. We can use this on our own creatures, especially our commander. If our commander is already evasive with flying, she's probably not getting blocked most of the time. But if she could get blocked, Rogue's Passage means no she doesn't. So this is a great way to get past our opponent's defenses. Or we can use this politically and say to an opponent, look, I know opponent A, you want to attack opponent B, but you're afraid of having to trade with opponent B's stuff, or you know that they are going to block you, and so your attack's going to be wasted. I will use my Rogue's Passage to make your attacker unblockable, as long as you and I are friends, and you don't bother me for the next, turn cycle or 2. Most opponents are going to say, that sounds great, because they know we're spending essentially 5 mana, 4 plus tapping the passage itself, to help them out. They'll say, great, go ahead and do it. And we will say, no, you have to attack first. Because if we activate our Rogue's Passage before you declare you're a creature as an attacker, you could declare them against us, and then they can't be blocked. We can't block them either. And they'll say, okay, that's fair. If we're making a deal, I will take the first step, and we'll quietly say to ourselves, well, we took the first step by making the offer, but sure, whatever. And they will say, I declare my attack against opponent B, and we'll say, great, we want to be honorable because we are worthy. We are playing Thor. So we're going to activate our Rogue's Passage and make your creature unblockable. And the reason we do that is not just because it's the honorable thing to do, or because we want the benefit of that deal we just made, but it's also because we're now having an opponent attack a different opponent who's also our opponent. Opponent A now has a creature that's probably tapped, so they can't block us with it, and they've used their combat step, or their combat phase, as that resource of that turn for our benefit. It's also for their benefit, but it's against opponent B, who is our opponent too, and that helps us out. So that's great, and that's the political way to use Rogue's Passage. The last way I like to call the strategic way, which is to say exactly the same thing I just said for the political way, but you don't make a deal. Instead, you just let somebody attack, and then you make one of their creatures unblockable before blocks are declared. Because you get to interfere with their combat. It doesn't say you can't, you have priority to do so if you want to, and it has the same benefits as before. You just don't get a benefit from like making a deal. But what you do get is that the defending player can't block, presumably, a creature that's worthy of you using Rogue's Passage on it. So if somebody attacks with their, I don't know, their giant Ancient Imperiosaur, which might be like a 20/20 or something. Does it have trample? Maybe it's a bad example. They're Gigantosaurus. There you go. It's a 10/10 with no evasive abilities. We can use our Rogue's Passage to make that Gigantosaur unblockable, and so it's doing 25% of the defending player's starting life total in damage, and it's also tapped now, so it can't block us if we attack them. It's also usually not a thing people do that often. I know some tables probably do this kind of thing more often, but usually I don't see people interfere in a combat between two other people. Like if player A is attacking a player B, you don't usually see player B or player C jump in and help someone out. They might hurt someone, but it's usually not like, oh, I'm going to make this even different for you, unless you're playing like a politics deck. But doing this apolitically is very funny and usually is a memorable moment, so that's even more fun. So yeah, Rogue's Passage is great for our Voltron deck, excellent in other ways too, so yeah, worth running. And that sums it up. Again, I'm releasing new Marvel Superheroes Commander decks every Thursday through mid-August when the Hobbit set drops, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific commander or style of deck. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live. Consider becoming a member on this channel or supporting my Patreon at patreon.com/secondmonitormagic. And remember, most of all, that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.